And then Ines, over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. I see that you have started introducing yourselves in the chats. We see people from Burundi, from Chad, from Uganda, from Namibia, from Ghana, from Cameroon. Welcome everyone on board. And my name is Ines Chakunte, YALDA Cameroon Executive Director, as well as Deputy Associate for Francophone Africa. We apologize that we are not going to have a simultaneous French translator due to unforeseen circumstances, but for those who are French speaking, je m'appelle Inès Chakunte, coordonnatrice nationale de YALDA Cameroun ainsi que associée régionale de l'Afrique francophone. Et bienvenue au YALDA AfCFTA Short Course with Certification. Alors, that was French. We will now proceed to a recap. But before the recap, we will go through some etiquettes that we all need to go through. Can everyone see the screen? I want to be sure that everyone can see the screen.
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Thank you very much, guys. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah,
so you have to be on mute to ensure maximum silence and efficiency of listening from all speakers. And you should remain mute throughout the roundtable until you have the permission to speak. Alors, tout le monde doit rester sur mute pour assurer la communication effective des facilitateurs. Ensure that your camera is off to have a better internet connectivity. Type your questions or comments in the chat box only. This is going to be when we have a question and answer session. So all questions can be typed in the chat box and then each person will be selected, not each three. Those whose questions or comments are selected will be asked to unmute and speak. Participants may open their camera if they are called upon to ask any question. If you are asked to speak, you must introduce yourself by your name and your country only, because we have time that we need to keep up to. And please repeat the question or comment you typed in the chat box. Thank you very much. Good evening from every other person coming in from Nigeria, from Algeria, and from Egypt. So this is the fourth course, short course that YALDA has organized for the AfCFTA campaign, the African Free Continental Trade Area. So when you participate in an AfCFTA short course developed by YALDA in collaboration with the UNDP, the International Trade Center, ITC, and the UNECA, you get a certificate upon completion. So we are trying to maximize understanding of the AfCFTA with the challenges and opportunities for young people on the African continent. So as you can see on the image, you can sign up now. You can go to the YALDA website and sign up. And it should be noted that this is not going to be the final module. We have had 1, 2, 3 already, and today we are having the 4th module, and we will have another 5th bonus module. So don't think that this is the last. There is a lot of information to be shared, and we cannot keep it to ourselves. Alors, ceci sera la 4e module, mais il y aura encore une 5e module pour ceux qui n'ont pas suivi la 1re, ni la 2e, ni la 3e. Alors, stay tuned for the 5th module. It shall be communicated. We want to take the opportunity as well to thank our partners, Afreximbank, the AfCFTA Secretariat, who are all present here on this Zoom call. We have the UNDP, the African Union, we have UNECA, and then we have ITC. For those who don't know the full meanings, ITC, International Trade Center, UNECA, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Greetings to those coming from DRC, you are welcome. And so we apologize one more for not having a French simultaneous translator. So sometimes I will be switching to French, and if we have a facilitator who is French speaking, he can or she can as well give his or her speech in French. Alors, merci beaucoup à tous les partenaires, Afreximbank, le secrétariat de la ZLECAf, les Nations Unies à la Commission économique africaine, le Centre international de trade, sorry, et le PNUD. Alors, Very good. So our agenda for today, we are going to go through 6 points. We will start with the AfCFTA short course modules recap, which was done by YALDA. We will go through the tangible achievements of the AfCFTA, which was done by the ITC. And then we will go through the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, which will be done by Afreximbank, harnessing AfCFTA for youth, led by partners dedicated to youth, done by UNECA. And last but not the least, we will have the African Continental Free Trade Area by the AfCFTA Secretariat. Like I said, guys, this is not the last module. We are going to have a 5th bonus module. So just stay tuned until we launch the 5th module. And I want to introduce the host for today, John Ubuaba from Ghana. If you can hear me, John, you can as well say something.
Hello, thank you, Ines. Good evening, everyone, all students. I welcome you to today's workshop.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for joining us. So we are going now to our first point on the agenda, AfCFTA short course module recap, which was done by YALDA. So the first module, which was done by YALDA, under the theme Agreement Establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, where we had 3 protocols discussed: protocol on trading goods, protocol on trading services, and protocol on dispute settlements. And the module was closed with the phase 2 negotiations, intellectual property rights, investment, competition, policy, digital trade, women, and youth in trade. And like I said, don't worry, this is going to be available on the YALDA website. So the theme for this module was towards greater integration and introduction to AfCFTA, and it was facilitated by UNECA. So John, over to you for the second module recap.
Thank you, Ines. So the second model of this training was, the theme was enabling youth engagement in the AfCFTA. And this particular model was presented by the UNDP. According to the surveys, 47% of businesses are struggling financially, and 91% of businesses seeking funding are also youth-owned. Then 1/3 of African youth are unemployed, and another 1/3 are vulnerable to unemployment. So what Model 2 sought to teach students was the fact that the AfCFTA came in to bridge this particular gap by creating jobs, creating consumption, reducing tax, and reducing procedural costs associated with trade. So the main thrust or the main focus of this particular model was that we need to consume African-made goods and services. And by so doing, it generates trade and creates jobs for young people. So the young people in Africa need to engage in opportunities and innovations around the AfCFTA. The good things, the opportunities that this particular agreement poses to young people. So this was the key discussions that were had during the second module of this training. Thank you, Ines.
Ines.
Oh, sorry, guys. So module 3 was facilitated by the International Trade Center, ITC, under the theme Opportunities versus Challenges, assessing the impact and hurdles of the AfCFTA. And it's important to note that one of the key points that were discussed during the module was the fact that on value chains, emphasis was placed on value chains. And one thing to note was that youths do not have to be the actual traders, but can produce goods and offer services along the value chain and still be part of the AfCFTA. And so some of the challenges that were discussed were poor logistics and infrastructure, prevalence of non-tariff barriers, cumbersome customs procedures, multiple clearing stages, inadequate IT infrastructure, limited information exchange, and corruption. And some of the opportunities that were discussed in the value chain were supply, production, marketing and distribution, as well as consumption. And the three value chains that were selected was agribusiness, manufacturing, and service value chain. So we come to the end of the recap of the three modules that we have had, and it will be important to ask if there is anybody with any question. We will take just 3 questions for now. So you can type in your questions in the chat box if you have any questions on the 3 first modules. Okay, John, I think in the absence of any question, we can proceed with our second point of the agenda, which is, okay, somebody raised his hand. Kashuka Nkosha, please, can you unmute, introduce yourself, name and country, and your question.
Thank you so much. My name is Kashuka Nkosha from Zambia. I wanted to find out, like, if you missed the first 3 modules, are you able to get them like via email or via YouTube? How can you access the first 3 modules? Thank you.
Ines, I'll respond to that.
Yes, the module is available on the YALDA YouTube channel, so you can get it there. And then we have Prince Justin also for a question.
Yes, Ines. So to add to that, at the end of this training, we would show you the various social media handles where you can access these materials. Thank you.
Of AfCFTA, where we can directly go there if we have some issues to approach those offices.
Sorry, can you come again?
Yes, I was asking, does AfCFTA has country offices or organizations that are representing them at the level of different countries where we can always approach them when it comes to issue of trade?
John, would you love to take that, please?
So for now, the Secretariat is based in Ghana. The AfCFTA Secretariat is based in Ghana for now.
Okay, please also to know that we can now focus on the questions on the 3 modules that we had in the past. For the pending questions, you can have them at the end of the session during our discussion. Just focus on the 3 modules that we had. Yeah.
And then we will take a last question from, oh, we don't have ladies asking questions. Okay, Adil Litos, if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Adil from Mozambique. I don't know that you can hear me yourself. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Adil from Mozambique. First of all, I would like to thank for opportunity, and I'm glad to be with you for different country. So I just like to know if the organization that they are giving us this training, do you think to do this course in presentially? Because I think that if we discuss about these topics, it will be upgrade ourselves. So I just like to know that you have a plan to next in future to join all the people and we choose one country to join other people and do and giving this training. I don't know that my question perfectly. So I just like to know that you have a plan to join other people in one house, like training, maybe 1 month or 1 week. And presentially, I guess that it will be interesting.
Yes, Adil, we understand your question perfectly, and your idea is a very good one, which we have taken into consideration. Considering that some countries still have COVID restrictions, it is quite very complicated to have a presentially, like you say, a physical training. But it has been taken into considerations, and discussions have been going on around the subject, and we are improving where we can. So thank you everyone for the questions. We will proceed. So we are officially launching module 4, which is under the theme Envisioning the Future of the AfCFTA. And we will then start with the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System session that is going to be led by Afreximbank. John, you would love to introduce them so that we can start.
Thank you, Ines. So this particular topic will be presented by the Afreximbank, and the presentation will be done by Mike Ugbanlu II. I don't know if I've pronounced your name well. The CEO of Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. So, sir.
Thank you very much, John. And thanks to YALDA for this opportunity. We're really delighted to always have a platform to be able to discuss what we're doing at PAPS and how it relates to the AfCFTA. Next slide. Can I request that every participant mutes? Okay, so here I identified 3 key pillars for the next phase of Africa's prosperity. And I said here that one of the pillars is having the enabling demographics, and for which we are really blessed. Africa has a youthful population, a very entrepreneurial population, and to that extent, we tick that particular box. The second one has to do with having the enabling environment. And here I speak about power, I speak about things like fiber infrastructure, and so on, and security. So we are still struggling with having the right enabling environment. Power is still an issue, security is an issue in some parts of the continent. But then there are driver infrastructures that will be critical, and they include identity, having, because when you talk about trade and transacting among people, the issue of trust is very critical. And one of those driver infrastructure is payment. And to just put that in context, trade does not happen without payments, okay? So payment is the trigger for trade. So anything that improves payment improves trade. So I've said here that an African centralized and interoperable payment system is critical for Africa's prosperity. So below here, I try to share the concept of a market. A market has buyers and sellers, it has products, and it has logistics to deliver those products. A market has rules. In the past, we've had 55 different rules, and this is why the AfCFTA is so critical to that prosperity that we want to achieve. This is our first attempt at having a continent-wide set of rules for trade. And then each market has an acceptable means of payment. The challenge in Africa is that we've not had an acceptable means of payment. The cedis in Ghana is not accepted in Nigeria. Naira is not accepted in Egypt, and Kenyan shillings are not accepted in South Africa. So again, we believe that by impacting payments, will grow the GDP or the economy of the continent, because when you look at GDP, it's a combination of consumer spend, government spend, investment, and then the net of export and imports. And all of this is impacted by payments. Next slide. So again, you look at the real economy, financial markets, where value is created. Now, these values will have to be exchanged. So when people produce, they produce for consumption, and then they also produce to exchange for value. Now, you have the banking system that interacts directly with the commercial actors that play in the trade space. And then ultimately, they are able to interact with some form of a clearing and settlement system, which is at the heart of payment. And this is how critical PAPS is to achieving intra-Africa trade. Next slide. Now today, and I always say this, nobody setting out to travel from Lagos to Accra, first of all, goes to New York and then lands in Accra. No, we travel from Lagos to Accra. Nobody setting out to go from Cape Town to Angola, first of all, travels to UK or to France or to somewhere else. We fly direct. Goods are shipped directly. When we talk on our cellular phones, we don't first of all route our communications through any other place outside of the continent. So why should money move in that way? Now here I've said that today you have about 18.8 billion as of 2017 commercial payments, and 80% of that had to travel outside of the continent before coming back to the continent. And this situation will continue if PAPS is not able to intervene in this space. And with that comes a lot of costs, that comes a lot of delays, and those impact trade. Next slide. So I've said here, again, if you look at the current payment methods, where a payment goes from one financial institution and travels through a network of corresponding banking relationships and arriving at the destination, sometimes up to 7 days, up to 2 weeks in some situations, that has an impeding effect on trade. So today, cross-border payment or cross-border trade is affected by the fact that there's an issue of access. So there are a lot of people that are currently outside of the banking or financial services space. There's the issue of transparency. Between these networks, there are a lot of charges and issues that exist which are not transparent to the parties. And of course, that has effect on trade. There's the issue of costs. It's like you are traveling on a train and you know what it means when your train has to go from point A to point B without having to stop at many different stops. And each of those stops means an additional cost. So clearly, by removing those stops, we are going to save costs for the continent. And then with passing through all those stops means delays and a lot of manual intervention. Next slide. So in this one slide, I want to speak to what PAPS is. PAPS at its core is an instant payment system that is able to process payments from one part of Africa to another part of Africa and complete it in under 120 seconds. And it's able to manage all the issues around FX and limits, user access, who is able to access or do transactions on the platform. It's able to clear and settle those transactions in local currencies. It supports sanction screening, AML monitoring, and fraud detection. So it meets all the global standards for cross-border payment system. And on top of that, we've built a number of governance institutions around PAPS, which make sure, because when you're talking about a critical financial services platform, the governance, a lot of times, is more important than the technology, is more important than just seeing it work. The governance makes sure that there will never be abuse on the platform. Now, we've taken this core system that we've built, and we have now started connecting to central banks. We have connected to large commercial banks, and we're connecting to switches. For example, the national switch in Ghana is on this platform. The national switch in Nigeria is on this platform. We have a number of banks that are already connected to this platform, and they will be able to extend this service to other people. Now, on top of that, we've created the opportunity for what we call indirect participants, which could be other payment service providers, remittance providers, mobile money providers, money transfer operators, so that they are able to leverage the rail that we have built to make their provision of services to customers simple and seamless. And then on top of that, we've created an innovation layer. And this is very important because Africa's youthful and very industrious population would require a rail such that when they create something in one part of the continent, they do not need to worry about how the money they originate in one country translates to another currency in another country, because PAPS would have dealt with that challenge. Next slide. So basically what we've now done is cut out all those network of correspondent banking relationships and have a point-to-point relationship with each of the financial services systems on the African continent. So I will speak to how far we've gone, but so far today, we're actually seeing that those cross-border transactions can actually occur in less than 7 seconds. And that is a major win for the continent, taking us from 7 days to 7 seconds. Next slide. Now, you might ask yourself, how is this related to the AfCFTA? And this is really a brilliant project, you know, by AfCFTA Secretariat, the Afreximbank, and supported by the African Union. Now, this payment infrastructure is now one of the supporting pillars of the AfCFTA. And this is because it was clear that if you are trying to create a market, then you have to deal with the acceptability of payments across the continent and being able to guarantee a seamless experience. So there are a number of other supporting pillars, and I'm sure that you've gone through that during your studies. But then PAPS is one of those supporting pillars of the AfCFTA. Next slide. So today on this network, we are bringing together the biggest financial services brands from across the continent. We have a number of central banks, we have a number of banks, we have a number of fintechs who and other payment service providers who are now joining the network, and the network continues to grow quite rapidly. Next slide. So where are we so far? Today we've connected 8 central banks. These 8 central banks are the 6 central banks in the WAMZ region: Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. 1 central bank in East Africa and 1 central bank in Southern Africa. We are at the point where we are about to also sign up an additional 4 central banks. So by the end of this year, we should have 12 central banks that are on this network. The central banks provide settlement services, and they also participate in payments as they choose. They also help to bring about regulation in their markets, and beyond that, contribute to regulations within the Governing Council to guide PAPS in its operations. We currently have about 35 banks that have signed and are at different stages of going live. We have 24 other commercial banks that are also at different stages of being onboarded. We are connected to 7 switches, and there are 4 other switches that are joining. The importance of switches is that we do not now need to start doing individual connections to banks. It reduces our integration time by a factor of 50%. We currently are doing business in 3 regions, but then we plan to have business in 5 regions before the end of the year. We've signed a number of strategic MOUs. We've signed MOU with the likes of reps, commercial reps in East and Southern Africa. We've signed MOU with Buna in North Africa, and these would join our network as nodes on our network. And we have other strategic relationships that we're working on. Next slide, and I believe that will be my last. So here I try to just do a quick recap on what is the benefit for the youths. So here we're saying that we will process this transaction in as little as 120 seconds. 120 seconds is our commitment to the market. However, since we went live on our pilot region, we've been seeing transactions complete in about 7 seconds. Our system is able to run all the essential checks and validation, and is able to even verify. We have APIs to verify that the beneficiary account is a valid account. By putting PAPs in place, we reduce the cost of transactions, bring about transparency, and make sure that payment is delivered with a seamless experience. Now, without third-party currency, a transaction originating in Nigeria, in Nigerian Naira, will arrive in Egypt in Egyptian pounds. So we're saying that commercial entities do not need to start worrying their heads about how to source FX, because in the arrangements that we have with the central banks and the settlement infrastructure in place, that will be taken care of. Now, as a business, you're able to fund and do your transaction in local currency. And more importantly, I traveled to a country and I met with a young business, a young fintech, and they had such a brilliant solution. But he sees his market as just 500,000 people, and he's facilitating certain elements of trade. But I've said to him that you need to begin to see 1.3 billion people as your market, rather than the 1 million people within your country. So this is some of what PAPS is able to do. And then we also expect that young people can now sort of go crazy, creating new solutions that will help to support trade, that will help to support logistics, help to support things like invoicing and different other aspects of trade, and not worry about how those transactions will be settled, because PAPS would have taken care of it. So I believe that PAPS is a major opportunity, especially for young people. Content is moving from being physical and so on, and is becoming digital, and you need a digital payment infrastructure that can even support the exchange of this contents even on the continent. So beyond trade, we want to support different aspects of payments, you know, and to make it seamless on the continent. Thank you very much. I believe this is my last slide. John, thank you. So we have our email and our phone number. Please feel free to mail us, and we're happy to engage and to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you. I hope I wasn't speaking to myself.
Thank you very much, sir.
No, you spoke to us all, yeah? We heard you, yeah?
I can hear you very clear, sir. I can hear you very clear.
We hear you.
From Benin City, Nigeria. They all know, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike, for your beautiful presentation. And there was one sentence I saw at the bottom of one of the slides. Fintechs and tech startups are the future of payments, and PAPS is already engaging 50+ fintechs. Thank you very much for the work you do and the impact you lead with the AfCFTA. I will now open up the floor for 3 questions which have been typed in the chat. Guys, remember that at the end of the session, the module is going to be available on YALDA's YouTube channel, as well as will be disseminated by emails for those who are registered on the YALDA network. And once more, apologies for the absence of a French translator, but the modules are going to be both in French and English. And we will now have 3 questions. I will go through the chat and choose. Like we said, questions should be typed out in the chat. So we have a question from Robert Bell from Kenya, who says, how will PAPS determine exchange rates between parties? Mike, you might want to answer that.
Yes, thank you. That's a fantastic question, and really one that if you do cross-border business, you must be interested in. Today, our model supports the central banks providing rates for each of their currencies against other currencies that are supported on the PAPS platform. So the central banks are able to provide the rates. However, we also are creating an additional model, and this model is to support settlements that will be done probably using commercial banks, and in which case we can explore either the commercial banks who provide the settlement funding, providing the applicable rates. So today, it's supported by rates from the central bank, to put it simply.
Okay, thank you. I think the answer is clear enough. And we have another question, this time around from a lady, KTT. Are all AfCFTA member countries mandated to be part of PAPS?
Well, again, we're creating value, and we believe that all member states will join. However, there has also been resolutions from the AU heads of state mandating all central banks to join. But we are not focusing so much on those resolutions. They are very important for us because it shows political support, but we are focusing on delivering value, because once we deliver value, everyone will join. People like to go in the direction of value. So that's our focus.
Okay. And then we have this last question from Tony Dauda. How can a business owner sign up to use PAPS?
Okay, thank you. That's an excellent one. So we have a number of, you can also visit our website. We continue to provide updates on the institutions that have joined. Now, as a business owner, you will be supported by a bank or some financial service provider. It is that financial service provider that will be directly hooked up on PAPS and then offer the service to businesses. So the business could be, you know, you want to buy something from a supplier in another country. In the same way that you typically raise an LC, you're able to do that, just that the payment channel, especially within Africa, is now going to be PAPS. Today, we have the service available in a number of countries. However, we plan to expand this to cover the entire continent. I hope I answered. Okay.
And then we have a floor for 3 more questions. John, are you here?
John Obuaba, can you please unmute?
Yes, okay, thank you very much. So we encourage our students to repeat the questions that they have typed in the chat box so that we can respond to them. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes,
can you
John.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you,
Hello,
sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
go
can hear you,
ahead.
sir.
Hello?
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, so we have another 3 round. Okay, we have another 3 round of questions. So we'll encourage our students to repeat the questions in the chat box themselves. So 3 questions, please. Can you raise up your hand, unmute your mic, and ask your question? So we have Dinah Owo. Dinah Owo, kindly unmute your mic, your name, your country, and ask your question, please.
Thank you, John. So my question to the presenter, Mr. Okbalu, is what is the current volume of transactions on the PAPS platform? And what's your projection of how that will grow over the next 5 years? And secondly, do you analyze the data that you draw from the volume of transactions, either at country level or even at industry level?
All right.
Sorry, someone muted me, but I heard her question. So she's asking about the volumes of the transactions. I would say today it's still a bit early days. What we started with, first of all, was putting in place the central bank rails. And after we've put that in place, we've now added commercial banks. The transactions that we have today are still not that many, but to answer your second question, we have built data. We built the system from scratch with the knowledge that ultimately data will be very critical for even things like product design, tracking the volumes of trade, and so on and so forth. So it's been designed to be able to generate rich analytics from the platform. So, but today is still a bit early days to begin to talk analytics, but we are very happy with the progress that we've made in terms of the transaction volumes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Franklin, kindly unmute and ask your question. Kindly introduce yourself, your name and your country. Franklin,
thank you. Thank you. My name is Franklin Mireri, tuning in from Arusha, Tanzania, but working in Kenya. My question regards the governance aspect, which Mike talked about. The question is, knowing how sensitive these platforms usually are in terms of governance, what are you envisioning as the ideal governance structure? Is it including, for example, all the 55 central bank governors in the governance or ministers of finance? So what is the challenge you envision in the governance aspect? Thank you.
Thank you. That's another fantastic question. Now, payments strictly lies within the domain of central banks. Central banks set the framework in their countries, they regulate it, and so PAPS will not be any different. PAPS has a governing council, and the governors of the central banks of participating countries sit on that governing council. They meet and they provide the highest levels of oversight for PAPS. So PAPS is a central bank-centric platform. Now, we also have another governance organ, which is the Payment Systems Oversight Committee. They have the power of direct supervision over PAPS, and it has the directors of the central banks of participating countries sitting on that committee. The third one is the board of PAPS, and the board of PAPS has eminent people and is not restricted to only participating countries. We have the likes of a deputy governor of the Central Bank of Egypt. We have Sitoyo Lopokoit, who is CEO of M-Pesa Africa. We have the likes of Arno Depe, who was former group CEO of EcoBank, and a lot of other eminent. We have Kofi Adomako, who is the CEO of the largest bank in Ghana. So eminent people from across the continent, they drive execution and the operations of PAPS. And of course, you have the management team. So, but all this is directly under the umbrella of the governing council, which is manned by the central banks, the central bank governors. Franklin, I hope I've answered you.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Okay. So we have our last question by Junior. Junior, can you unmute your mic, introduce yourself and ask your question?
Oh, thank you so much. My name is Junior Nwandinda from Ikoyaka, Uganda chapter. Now, my question one is, does this mean that only the participating countries are those which are already enlisted on the PAPS platform? And another thing, is it that anyone can transact easily from anywhere on this?
Okay, I think I get his question, and I think both questions are related. PAPS is designed to, and even by its name, it's called the Pan-African. So it's expected that all countries of Africa, all the countries and territories of Africa will participate on PAPS. So that the AU, in deciding to endorse this platform, there was a request for us to start in a region and then do a pilot before spreading to the rest of the continent. And that's why it looks like we are somewhat skewed to a side. We are engaging all the different regions, and that's why I talked about our MOU with the Commercial Clearing House, such that we will be able to connect the REPS platform to the platform. So we intend for every country to be able to participate. Now, different countries move at different paces. We are focusing on the willing countries, or the faster paced countries, but then PAPS is open to connect to all countries. And also the good thing is that Afreximbank has graciously approved $500 million to support settlement between these countries, and also $3 billion to guarantee settlement finality when we spread to the rest of Africa. So we are talking to all the different countries. We talk at central bank level and at political level, and we're happy with the progress that we've made so far.
Okay, Mr. Mike Oban II, thank you very much for your presentation. Students, we will move to our next presentation.
Thank you.
So I will hand over to my co-host, Ines, to take us to the third presentation. Thank you.
By the International Trade Center, tangible achievements of the AfCFTA. Richard, if you can hear me, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, Ines, I'm here. Thank you very much. Can you hear me also?
Of course.
Great. Okay. Ines, I think we can do it like this. Exactly. So you just flip the slides for me, and then I go ahead. Okay. So once again, thanks everybody for attending this module as well. On the one hand, we will look at the tangible achievement of the AfCFTA as quickly as possible. I think Afreximbank has done one of my jobs, so that really helped. So I would try as much as possible to stay below the 5 minutes allocated. Next slide, please, Anis. Yeah, so I mean, one of the most tangible achievement of the AfCFTA is the African Trade Observatory. This is simply a dashboard or a platform to gather information about trade business in Africa. For instance, if there is a product that you would like to export from Ghana to, say, Kenya, or to Nigeria, or to Botswana, you can look at where the markets are, because all this information has been collected from different countries in Africa, and then they have been put on this platform. So for instance, if you are an exporter of jams from Ghana, you can look at the available market in Africa for jams, and that will help you know exactly where to export. You can compare different markets, say markets for jams in Nigeria or in Zimbabwe or in Egypt. You can look at various products that are in need where there's market demand. So clearly, that is an opportunity which the AfCFTA offers, be able to see where there is market and then you exploit this market. And as business people or as entrepreneurs, the most important thing I always say is that any business that you conduct or any trade which you conduct should have a market. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to conduct the business. And so this platform allows you to see the different opportunities that are in terms of market access. So that is an African Trade Observatory. I would strongly ask our participants or our students, have a look at the website which I have put there. I mean, simply type ato.africa. It will bring you straight to see and then perform this live yourself. See the different opportunities that exist in terms of market opportunities. But that is not all. There is also the trade information to know more about the kind of tariffs which you will need to actually look at when you are exporting. Indeed, the tariff book is out from the AfCFTA Secretariat is out. But on the one hand, there were already existing platforms which also showed some amount of, a level of tariffs across the continent. And you can also find that on the ATO, that is the African Trade Observatory. It is implemented by the ITC, International Trade Center, but it is funded by the European Union, and then of course administered by the African Union. So it's a kind of a triple helix situation we have here. Please, students, just take your time to have a look at this, and then you'll be able to compare, you'll be able to explore the products, the markets which are available on the continent. Thank you. Ines, please, the next slide. And also there is the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund. And I think here, maybe Mike, if Mike is there, he could as well make a little contribution when I'm done. But it's an adjustment fund by the same group of people, Afreximbank, the African Union, and then the AfCFTA Secretariat. It is envisaged that in many cases, some countries might lose some tariff profits or revenue. And so this adjustment fund has been instituted such that those sensitive products, which are very key to a particular country, will then be cushioned by the adjustment fund. And it has three components. And I think for entrepreneurs, the most important is the credit fund, where it will allow for the commercialization of, or the availability of funds for you to be able to access the finance in order to carry out your businesses. It is to be done by both the public and the private sector. So there is that partnership there to help create the funds for the AfCFTA entrepreneurs, so to say. Yeah, I mean, the base fund will be coming from the state parties, that is the different countries under the AfCFTA. They would create, it's like they will put money into this base fund. The general fund will be for concessions, which countries and entrepreneurs can actually access. But for the entrepreneur, it is clear that the credit fund will be very useful. So these are some of the tangible achievements so far, which always put us in a good light, be able to use to spread our businesses across the continent of Africa. Ines, the next slide. And actually, the next slide is the PAPS. I will not talk about it because it's already been extended. But I would like to chip in the newest achievement. Sorry. The newest achievement, I would say, that is the AfCFTA Guided Trade Initiative. And you would agree with me that since January 2021, when we started trade, implemented trade, there hasn't really been trade ongoing. Well, of course, without statistical evidence, we cannot claim there is no trade. But what the AfCFTA is doing now is to guide trade. It has selected some entrepreneurs, businesses from Ghana, Egypt, and Kenya. It's still an ongoing discussion. And some of these entrepreneurs or exporters are already exporting to, say, from Ghana to Kenya. So they would like to guide and see the process, how the challenges, the non-tariff barriers which may occur, that is, those which are not like export and import duties, but in terms of delays, documents as such. see how the process will work. And that will really help to give prominence for entrepreneurs or exporters who would like to. May I kindly ask that we all mute our mic? Thank you. So clearly, that will be an opportunity for new entrepreneurs to see the export process. And I think going forward, we are on a good light. We are on a good way. I will end here and then ask for questions or that will respond to questions that may come up. Ines, thank you. I submit.
Thank you very much, Richard, for the very brief presentation, but enriching. And we will go around and have another 3 questions. So you can just raise your hand if you have any question. I will remind again that the slides will be available on our YouTube channel, YALDA International, and they shall be disseminated by email address, both in French and in English. So we will take the first question from Modi Diop. You can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, colleagues. Bonsoir, je suis Modi Atman Diop, je suis du bureau du Sénégal, bureau pays du Sénégal PNUD. Et donc, je vous remercie pour ces présentations. Je pense avoir noté tout à l'heure qu'il y a des documents en version française qui sont disponibles. Je voulais bien savoir où est-ce que je peux avoir ces documents directement. Sinon, ma deuxième question, c'est que est-ce que le PAPS est effectif au Sénégal? Est-ce qu'il y a des fintechs qui sont déjà interconnectés? Est-ce qu'il y a des partenariats qui sont établis au Sénégal? En un mot, quel est l'état d'avancement? Moi, je viens de découvrir cette plateforme personnellement et je viens aussi de voir qu'il a été lancé en mai 2021. Il était prévu qu'à la fin de l'année, que la plateforme soit effective et opérationnelle. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, la plateforme est totalement opérationnelle? Merci.
All right, I think I'll have to translate the question. Alors oui, Diop, les modules seront envoyés à la fin sur la page YouTube. And his question was asking if PAPS is operational in Senegal. I don't know if Richard would like to answer or Mike.
I will wait first if Mike is still on. If not, then I would come in. Yeah.
Mike might have left, but we do have other colleagues who can answer these questions from PAPS. So that should not be a problem. I think, John Obuaba, you have the names of the other colleagues from PAPS who can answer the questions, because I don't see Mike anymore.
Okay.
Okay, so
you can go ahead and answer the question.
Vanessa, if you can help me with the name.
Okay, you can just go ahead. I think Monica is not in, and Papa is also not in, and also Patrick. So Richard, you can just go ahead and.
Okay, all right. So Modi, if you can get me, actually, PAPS was first of all piloted in 6 countries in West Africa. At the time, Senegal was not part. It was Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, I think Guinea, and the Gambia. Guinea-Conakry, I would say, the Gambia. So at the time when it was piloted, Senegal was not part. But then what I'd rather say is PAPS is such, it's still collecting information or contracts or agreements, so to say, from the different central banks in different countries. As soon as central banks agree to join, then they become already part of it. So at the moment, I'm unable to tell you exactly if Senegal has joined yet, but from the beginnings when it was piloted, Senegal was not part. But I strongly believe that Senegal being a good player in fintech, financial technology, and also a very strong player in business process outsourcing, it is for Senegal to be part. So in the not too distant future, we will see if Senegal is part or not, joining or not. But certainly it will. But I'll look out for this information extra and send to you, Modidio. Yeah. Thank you. Ines, back to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. I would love to mention that, ladies, you are also welcome to ask questions. We have had a round just from the men, which will be gender equal. And also, if you have already asked your question, you will kindly lower your hand so that we don't choose you 2 times. We need to give the opportunity to others. We will take the second question from Mark. Mark, away, you can ask your question. And please, immediately you ask, please lower your hand so that other people can also ask.
Good evening, everyone. My question is also about the PAPs. And I wish the first presenter is here because it's a very important. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My questions are this. Number one, we have the transactions. When you are using PAPs, it goes through 4 transactional stages. First of all, you will have to contact, as a transactor, you have to contact your company had to contact your bank had to contact the central bank, and the central bank had to contact PAPs. And when the approval is given for the transaction to take place, the same process has to be followed. And we know the banking system and how slow it can be. So I don't know, in terms of this African Continental Trade Agreement, how that can be facilitated so that when my company is conducting a transaction, these 4 stages will be a quick process than to be slow. And the second question is just in line with that. The Ghana, for example, I know that they have what they call the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement System Limited, a platform that is designed for financial and non-financial institutions, banks and savings and loan companies and fintechs and even mobile phone operators. So everyone is able to do transactions. So why not the PAPs being an inclusive thing where individuals with an approved and a very high-tech system, as we have payment system in Ghana, can be able to individually conduct their transactions without necessarily passing through the very rigid and vigorous process of these 4 transactional: company, bank, central bank, and PAPs. That's my question.
Okay. Ines, I will take this again, just in case our colleagues from Afreximbank are not there. Okay, I go ahead. Actually, Prince, thank you very much. I think you raised very pertinent issues, but the PAPs actually itself, in the verification, I mean, from your bank, from you, the company, to your local bank, and then to the central bank, to PAPs, all this, it's done in real time. You get what I mean? The verification, it is verified if, first and foremost, there is enough funds to be able to do that. And in the end, you are notified, or your bank is notified, so you get the results. And then the other side, that is after the export and then the import side, it's also the same. So Afreximbank considered this actually, so that, guys, sorry, I think the little one is being is now making a bit of hulabaloo here, but please bear with me. But from the export side, you see in real time the process ongoing, and also from the import side, you see in real time how it's going. So I mean, that is like some kind of transparency which allows you to check how it is going, which normally wouldn't have been the case because of intransparency. So I think that real time allows you to see how things work, and that really helps. So Prince, that is one thing which you PAPs is bringing, that transparency PAPs is bringing, that it will even hasten the game. The other issue of why not individuals, as you said, in Ghana, not using it, I think it's a matter of time to see how PAPs will work, and then they can be integrated. But at the moment, there's an issue of exchange rate. That is why the central banks are coming in. And if it is just individual transfers, it will still be a market, a demand and supply thing without any rules governing it. So when it passes through the central bank, the interesting thing is that the central banks are doing this, and you as the exporter or the importer, you don't worry yourself too much about exchange rate issues. It's going to be determined at the back office by these central banks. So it is calculated for you how much you would have to pay, how much the buyer has to pay you in Ghana cedis, given the exchange rate is ongoing there. So and that is why it is better at the moment to pass everything through the central bank and then the PAPS system before the end game is completed. But I'm sure with time, when the relevance of individual businesses or individual tech agencies that are strong enough to conduct such business will be included, I would think. And PAPS is not doing this at the moment alone as a Afreximbank continental body. No, it is doing so. It's actually partnering the different institutions you talked about, your local bank, the central banks. So that element of complexity is somehow needed to verify that PAPS works. But I'm sure along the line, when things begin to be clearer, we will be able to do such transactions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. And then we will have the last question from Nolwazi Muhale. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. And hi to the baby who is doing the lullaby, Richard. So Nolwazi Muhale, you can ask your question, please.
Thank you so much. Observing our protocol through you. My question is a follow-up question in terms of the relationship between central bank, the PSS, as well as our local bank. How then does a transaction get authorized in terms of the turnaround time? Because we know sometimes it can take long. How much is it available to be authorized, or what is the limit that can be able to be transferred in terms of me sending my goods into Ghana? Thank you.
No, Alzi, you've asked a very delicate question, which for me, I will not be able to answer it fully because there's a bit of technicality in there. But as far as I know, with apps, this should not be more than 24 hours if it has been verified. Sometimes it even takes hours, a few hours to be able to do this. I think I'm quite sure of it. In terms of the limit, at the moment, there hasn't been a cap. If you're talking about the limit in terms of how much you can actually transact through PAPS, there hasn't been a cap yet. But I think this is also free. But here I'll be cautious to give any certainty here. But for sure, in terms of transparency, checking the real-time issues of PAPS, this should not even be more than 24 hours. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Note that the email address of all the facilitators are indicated on the slides. So if you have more questions, you can directly email them your questions. Since we don't have a lot of time, we cannot take everyone's question. Thank you very much, Richard, for your efficient contribution. And we will now move to our third presentation that will come from the UNDP under the theme, Harnessing AfCFTA for Youth. What does it mean? So I will call on Barak if he's here. Barak, if you can hear me, can you?
Great. Yes. Thanks. Can you hear me? Hope
I can hear
my mic
you.
is fantastic. Right. And I hope my connection holds. No, thank you very much first to the two presenters from PAPS and ITC. I think they have really covered the very critical and tangible examples quite comprehensively. And I'm starting to think that perhaps this presentation should have been the first one because it speaks more to like the broad strokes. You know, as UNDP, our support really happens to be heavily at the national level. And, you know, we do work with the traditional partners like, you know, the very like government, CSOs, and increasingly private sector and the youth networks, etc. Well, my name is Barak Ocheng, as mentioned, and I'm Regional Coordination and Support Officer, really working with the Regional Youth Team on supporting our 46 country offices in Sub-Saharan Africa on issues of youth empowerment. And I'm also the focal person for some of our flagship youth initiatives, such as the Youth Connect program that is now spread in 28 countries in Africa, and our work on entrepreneurship with the Tony Lumelu Foundation. So that's a bit of a disclaimer because we have a dedicated AfCFTA team and they couldn't be here. So I'm just doing the presentation on behalf of the team. But I think if we have Komi, if he manages to join, it would be good for him to also, jump in where possible. So maybe let's move to the first slide. I'll just keep it very brief. And I guess the context is what we all know. And I feel like now I'm already speaking to the choir on some of these developmental issues that we know, unemployment in Africa being increasingly and very stubbornly high and continues to really cause pressing challenges. Now, we're talking of 12 to 15 million people entering the market every year and only 3 million formal employment opportunities being created. And so, we see that even a third of the continent is unemployed, and between the age of 15 to 35. And so this of course does not represent the official unemployment rates in Africa, but as we know, it is about 20%. But it kind of masks a much higher unemployment rate across the continent. So what we've been trying to address increasingly with our, I guess, youth economic empowerment interventions is how do we kind of catalyze some of the things that need to be in place to ensure that young people have access to various economic opportunities. We're seeing that 80% of businesses in Africa really are categorized as SMEs, and these are predominantly youth-led, and they're really characterized by informality. And informality actually accounts for more than 85% of economic activities in Africa. And so it was actually surprising for me to also learn that nearly 90% of the labor force in this informal sector, a lot of it is women, who account for this, majority of the informal labor force. And so these are issues that we've been increasingly looking at in a lot of our interventions. And when we talk about the Continental Free Trade Agreement and what it must really solve, this is a very deep-rooted issue of unemployment that really needs to be addressed. And so we have a targeted program focusing on youth economic empowerment that really looks at working with government and working with the various existing infrastructures to see how best that can be done. Well, maybe let's move to the, sorry, my computer has frozen, but let's move to that slide. Now the AfCFTA really is an important step towards facilitating increasing market access and products for young people. And tapping into this market, I believe the first presenter mentioned that it is a 1.3 billion person market with a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion. The question now here becomes, how can this be effectively done? And this is where the issues of transfer of funds that had been really highlighted very well by PAPs and other issues of free movement of people really becomes very, very critical. We also have to look at the various regulatory barriers, among other things, that continue to hinder youth-led innovation and enterprise. And with the AfCFTA becoming or being an enabler for Africa's response to the various global trends, and a lot of things have actually changed very recently. There's a number of issues that that need to be addressed, especially over the last 2 years. We've seen that there's now efforts to really see how best to be more resilient to the future related to pandemics, in terms of localized production of healthcare supplies. We're also now looking at green growth strategies, and we're also looking at the various digital technologies that are emerging.
and how best these can be leveraged. And we're also looking at the declining contribution of foreign aid or foreign aid flows on the continent at this very pivotal time. And so really the AfCFTA becomes even more important than ever in addressing some of these challenges that we're facing now. So then, so what needs to be done exactly for the AfCFTA to facilitate economic growth? Really, it calls for the stronger cooperation of frameworks really to boost trade capacity and social development. Of course, under the oversight of the AfCFTA Secretariat, really ensuring that there is, various effective subsidiary bodies, as well as the regional and national coordination frameworks that are effectively implemented. Also looking at the better terms for trade in enhancing global export earnings. Intra-Africa trade is really expected to open a wide variety of export opportunities, as we all know, but especially how can this be leveraged with the regional value chains and opportunities that actually will be presented within them. Another thing perhaps to consider really is how best to boost their livelihoods, increasing economic opportunities for youth-led enterprises, and perhaps something that this can be kind of captured is within the fourth industrial revolution, as we all know, really implementing the AfCFTA to ensure that how do I put it, that the fourth industrial revolution really we see that it is rapidly evolving and closing the window for the traditional, I guess, more labor-intensive paths to industrialization. And so the digital economy becomes significant, and it has really caused some irreversible transformation to, I guess, existing value chains, skills development, opportunities or things that need to be done in terms of skill development. We're talking about even production and trade. So digital solutions and all that are things that we have been increasingly trying to see how best to leverage. Next slide. Now, when we look at the development approach, and I gave the disclaimer earlier on that UNDP really works with government, and a lot of our response is more geared towards the regulatory and policy environment, and making sure that this is conducive for intra-Africa trade, and a lot of it is the trade governance. And when we do talk about trade governance, we talk about trade policy towards effective trade management, and seeing how best to boost intra-Africa trade, and what requires to be in place in order to adopt and implement a coherent and effective set of trade policies at the national, regional, and continental levels, which of course should be specifically geared towards the promotion of intra-Africa trade, and really liberalizing the key elements of the integration programs that most African countries and the RECs, etc., have in place when it comes to the various trade protocols, etc. One thing we're also looking at is really how the AfCFTA and working with the AfCFTA Secretariat and other partners such as the AU can unlock the opportunities at the country level, and in terms of the oversight, what needs to be done by the AU intergovernmental system in this regard. Let's move to the next one, please. Sorry, is that, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, and there are certain things that we're looking at. One is the establishment of a trade facility or trade finance facility, and the mechanisms for small and medium-sized business enterprise. Now, recently there have been conversations, and part of it was captured by the colleague from PAPS on how commercial banks can contribute towards establishing various trade financing mechanisms, to support young people in regard to access to finance. And of course, this has been something that is taking a lot longer than expected to really implement at the continental level. And the question really of the feasibility of it is something that has been raised. And so UNDP has been, doing a lot of their advocacy work in this regard. But then also the next thing is really to leverage the special economic zones and the regional economic communities, and working on integrating them as effectively as possible, and ensuring that all 54, 55 countries that make up the continent really are connected as well as possible, and really limiting the fragmentation that we do see, when it comes to the economic aspect. Some of it was captured, the financial flows, etc., is something that has to be addressed as we move forward. Well, let me leave it here for now. I wish Komi is on the line. I know he may wish to add something because he's the specialist on this. As I mentioned, mine is more geared towards the youth economic empowerment activities that we have with our Youth Connect program and Tony Elumelu Foundation. So I'd be happy to share a bit of that, because we're starting to see that it needs to be effectively tied to the support required as related to youth in the AfCFTA. So thank you, and over.
Okay, I think Barak Komi is not in, and over to Ines or John. He'll respond on any question that will be raising. I think for now, Komi is not in.
Okay, thank you very much, Barak, for the awesome presentation. I guess we and every other person on the platform has had a lot of insights. John, can you hear me? If yes, I will. John?
Okay, so thank you, Ines. So we'll open the floor for 3 rounds of questions from students. So kindly raise your hand, mention your name, and you will mute your mic and ask your question. All right, so I have Saliu B. Bangura. Kindly unmute, introduce yourself first, your name and your country, and ask your question. Over to you.
My name, hello, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Saliu B. Bangura from Sierra Leone, CEO and founder of DB Agricultural Helpline. My question is, what are the measures that UNDP has put in place in order to help empower the youth in Africa?
Thank you. Yes, I think that is something I work directly on and would be happy to respond to. Well, when it comes to youth economic empowerment, or just empowerment in general, there are a number of things that we consider. The first one, we have programs that work on youth in the area of peace building. And we have, another program on youth and climate action. But for the one on economic empowerment, the main thing that we're looking at, okay, the first one is the skills development aspect of it. How do we connect young people to various resources to enhance skills? So these are very thematic. When you talk about agriculture, there are specialists that we work with in the area of agribusiness, blue economy, creative industries, etc. But then also, this is coupled with the financial support that we do provide with initiatives such as the one that I spoke about with the Tony Elumelu Foundation. That one, some of you may be familiar with, provides some non-refundable grant financing to youth-led SMEs and startups. So that is what we've been trying to do with, I guess, our very modest resources. Understandably, that this is something that that would have to be scaled up at a very, very, large scale at the continental level, and requires a lot of resources to do. But we've already registered some very promising results from such initiatives. And the youth that have gone through them have been able to really scale up their businesses. And so the AfCFTA really provides that kind of catalyzing effect to ensure that that this growth continues. Of course, we also work with the national partners at more the policy level to ensure that a lot of the existing frameworks at the national level, government through the Ministry of Youth, etc., are responsive to the needs on the ground. So this is something we've also been trying to do with initiatives such as the Youth Connect program. And so increasingly now we just have to create that very concrete linkage with the AfCFTA work and some of what our partners are doing to really concretize that support and take it to the next level. So thank you.
The next question. I think Emmanuel, you have raised your hand. You can come in. Just mention your name, the country you come from. And you can ask the question.
Right. Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Ansamprofi. I'm a Ghanaian, but I'm speaking from Abuja, Nigeria. That's where I'm working from at the moment. My question is basically on creating jobs for youth within the agribusiness space, especially mechanization. How would some of these solutions, because one of the key problems with Africa's agriculture is that we have failed to mechanize our field. That does not make it attractive for young people to go into this sector. Reason is also being that tractors or machines are expensive. I'm saying this at the background of we pioneering the Uber for Tractor model, which is currently working in 6 African countries. But we've seen that asset financing and then also accessibility to patient capital to scale some of these solutions, it's hard. That is why we've not been able to show up with our agribusiness or our production to a level that allows people to, willingly join. So how is some of these solutions helping such programs in terms of asset financing to be able to produce more on our continent? Yeah. Take a challenge of currently the wheat challenge, which Africa shouldn't have faced this challenge if our fields are being mechanized. So how are you helping to solve such problem with the various programs? Thank you.
No, indeed. Thank you for that question, and a very, very excellent question. And definitely, the agribusiness space, like a lot of others, are, face a lot of challenges when it comes to creating the opportunities for youth at scale. For the agribusiness challenge, like you've mentioned, really it becomes from a certain level, it becomes increasingly capital intensive, and so even the innovation at scale within this space really requires a lot of resources, especially for young people. And so issues of access to productive resources and financing and various channels through which young people can be able to scale up what they're already doing becomes very, very challenging. And some of it is hard to address by an organization maybe like UNDP, because we talk about access to financing, the issue of collateral comes in. But what we've been trying to do increasingly is work with private sector and different, financial institutions to see if there can be some innovative funding mechanisms that are available for youth, for youth-led businesses. And so at country level, there are quite some interesting examples that we can take. Off the top of my head, I think of the example of EcoBank in Uganda that has been working with the UNDP to kind of find ways of, I'm not sure how that particular system goes, but it's kind of, a group of youth interested in developing a business or working, if it's an agribusiness company, are able to access funding, without that extra collateral requirement. And so, they're trying to see how best to go about it. And this is something we're doing within our interventions, and hopefully can be scaled up moving forward. Thank you. Hello, I heard someone say something.
Hello. Okay, Vicky, hello. So Vicky, can you unmute and ask your question? Introduce yourself first.
John, I think let's move on because time is not on our side. Vicky, you are next for the next question. We don't have time. We've got 2 more presentations, but we're doing Q&A at the same time, so I'm not too worried about that. But let's move on. Thank you, Baraka, for your presentation. John, also, can you mention a little bit about the YALDA fund quickly and the YALDA Adopt an Idea, because it's a mechanism of financing that we do here at YALDA as well. Just in 1 sentence, and then we move on to the next presentation.
So we at YALDA, we're creating a fund for young entrepreneurs so they could tap in and expand their businesses. So it's also an avenue that as YALDA as an organization, we are putting in place to support young entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs especially, to support their businesses. Thank you.
So we are moving to our 5th point on the agenda. I think, John, you would like to introduce the presenter.
Okay, thank you very much, Inais. So I present to you the next presenter. The next presenter is Mie Vedel, Jorgensen Associate Expert in Economic Affairs, Market Institutions Division of UNECA. He will be presenting on the AfCFTA program led by partners dedicated to the youth. Thank you, Mr. Mien. Over.
Thank you very much. My name is Mia, and I am here today to present to you some of the work that is being led by all the partners who has worked on this webinar for you. And it's now you have heard a lot about on the AfCFTA and all the different operationalized mechanisms of which exist. So we thought that it would be good to also give you an idea of how we are moving from all of these different both policies and initiatives, but then move it into some different activities that actually has an effect on youth. And so that is why I will present some issues or some activities the different partners are doing. I was planning to go through, if you can go to next slide, please, to call on each of the organizations per slide. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. So I was planning to call up one organization per slide, just so for them to give a brief explanation to the work that they do. One of the first things that we are doing when we're discussing youth empowerment in trade, in intra-Africa basis, and youth in businesses in Africa, and how we can empower these businesses to trade across the continent with each other, and how they can tap into a larger market using the AfCFTA. One of the first things we're doing is that we are creating new knowledge. This is particularly important as for youth in trade is an area which has been researched a little bit less compared to other research areas such as women in trade. Then youth in trade is less represented in research. So one of the things that we have been doing in the different agencies is that we go out and we see what are the different what are the main barriers that are impacting youth to thrive economically and in trade, and then we see what kind of institutions can we implement to help, what kind of policies can we implement to help youth trade more on an intra-African basis. So both ITC and UNECA and UNDP have done some research projects, and I would like to call on UNDP to give a brief introduction to some of the research projects you have been doing. Just very briefly, what have you been researching, and what just one main point of what you have identified?
Well, I'm not sure if we have Ife or Komi on the line. I heard it was noted that Komi is not on the line, but is Ife on? I think she has been more directly involved. My department is more on the economic part and specific project-related activity.
If it's not on the line, but you can just get a view from the slide. I think it's listed there. You can just elaborate a little bit about it.
All right. Well, as captured here, really, there have been some, I guess, publications that UNDP has been working on, and a lot of them have been done with support from the AfCFTA Secretariat and the AU. This one on the Futures Report really has been looking at ensuring or making the AfCFTA work for women and youth, and specifically focused on various value chains to be made in African products. Now myself, I'm not sure what the key findings of these ones were, but I'd be happy to perhaps share it with you after the call, once I consult with the colleagues who have been directly involved in this. I do recall one of the trainings that we did have on AfCFTA and the opportunities it presents for youth was done with the African Union, and there were a number of modules that happened. I believe, well, two, but one was done last year, and there was a bit of a connection. Oh, hello, sorry. And yes, I guess the youth that had gone through this training program, a lot of them actually participated in the Youth Connect program that I spoke about earlier. And there was a summit that happened in Accra, Ghana last year. The overall objective of the course was to get recommendations from youth on how they can make the AfCFTA work for them, or how they would like to see it work for them. And so this was very much linked to the Continental Summit that happened in Accra last year. And so this is something I was directly involved in. Thank you, over.
Thank you, Baraka. I don't know where the presentation went. If you can please share the presentation. Thank you. Yeah, so I encourage you to reach the UNDP's flagship publications on youth in trade, both the Futures Report and also the Which Value Chains for Made in Africa Products. They are very they're very informative. And one thing we are also working on, both in ECA and I know UNDP is working on it as well, is that we are doing some research on how we best can address youth barriers in the AfCFTA protocol for women and youth in trade. Marie, she will go more into depth in this protocol, but just to give you an idea also of the process and how we go from exploring knowledge and finding knowledge in order to make policy recommendations of how we best can address the main youth barriers that we've seen change, that we see in intra-African trade. Next slide, please. So another thing which all of the organizations are working on is capacity building of youth stakeholders. And this includes both capacity building of business associations, we in ECA have trained several business associations in different places in Africa on how business associations best can work with youth organizations, and how youth businesses can help implement the AfCFTA, and what the main challenges are for youth in harnessing the trade in Africa and intra-African trade, and the role of businesses associations. How can business associations in the best way help youth businesses in intra-African trade? Moreover, we are also doing capacity building by having youth and AfCFTA webinars, such as we do today. This is a very good event, a very good initiative, which is being led by YALDA, and it's very important to raise awareness and about the AfCFTA and the different opportunities that are being created on the basis of the AfCFTA. So having these kind of meetings as we do now to give the youth information on the AfCFTA, because there is a major information gap for trade opportunities between youth and between the more established enterprises. So this is also a way that we try and build capacity for youth so that they're able to harness the opportunities that they have. And information is really key when it comes to thriving economically, and that's why we're creating awareness of these kind of opportunities. We have also created some podcast series on sports and AfCFTA. We have had a larger research project where we have tried to investigate how we can leverage sport to implement the AfCFTA, and particularly engaging youth in the AfCFTA. And based on these research projects, we have created a podcast series. We can also share a link with you with these podcast series, so you can go and listen to them for yourselves. Another way of we're doing capacity building is through mentorship programs. Right now in ECA, we have a mentorship program of where we have 9 mentees, where we are hosting workshops with them. They are all working in different areas of communications and infographics and animations, and then we're helping them communicate the AfCFTA within these different kinds of areas. So it's kind of a mentorship where we give them an assignment, and then we co-create this assignment together and give them both some good feedback so that they can take with them in the future, but also to help provide this better understanding of how we work with ECA and how we advocate for AfCFTA in the best way as possible. And as you can see, we also have capacity building initiatives from ICC. They are training skills and entrepreneurs. UNDP also has a range of capacity building programs. They have the AfCFTA Youth Innovation Challenge. And then we have Afreximbank, who are providing technical capacity through partnerships with incubator and accelerator programs that support youth-led businesses. So there are many different kinds of capacity building, which is also important to teach youth how free trade in Africa can be leveraged, and to teach them about the opportunities that they have. Next slide, please. Another thing which we all do is that we are raising advocacy for youth and AfCFTA. And one of the ways we're doing it, we have, for example, had in this group, which we are also together today of organizations, it was led by YALDA, this youth competition on the AfCFTA. YALDA has a very wide network, and YALDA is very talented at reaching very far. So YALDA initiated this competition for youth in different categories to explain what kind of opportunities are there for youth for the AfCFTA? So we asked that question for youth, and then they could address this question in 3 different categories: in animations, infographics, and through writing an essay. And then we all had a competition, and we selected the best submissions, and then we had 3 winners in each category. So this is also a way of spreading awareness of the AfCFTA. Another way we do it is that we're also engaging with governments on the role of youth in the AfCFTA. This is something we are all doing. So once we have generated the knowledge of how we best can address youth challenges to trade, then we also go out and we engage with governments to help them implement policies that address youth inclusion in trade. One of the ways ECA do it is that we have the AfCFTA national implementation strategies, which we are helping, which we are working with governments in creating and implementing. And one of these aspects is also youth engagement and youth inclusiveness. Yeah, next slide, please. A 4th element in how we are working on implementing the AfCFTA and empowering youth is through empowering youth networks. And here I would like to call on ITC and Afreximbank to explain a bit more on their activities. ITC, would you like to begin explaining of how you empower youth networks?
Mia, we have 11 minutes left. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So can I just kindly ask that we wrap up so we can move on to the AfCFTA slides, Secretariat slides,
okay.
And then we can take 3 questions and wrap up this work. Students, we apologize. We're probably gonna run over 5-10 minutes, so please stick with us. But let's wrap up and do the last presentation, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Mia, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I thought you...
No, I was saying just wrap up like your presentation and then we can move on to the last one.
Okay, so I wanted to call on ITC and Afreximbank, but perhaps to save time. So what ITC is having this YE community where they create access to networks, mentoring, and resources. So I really encourage you to look at the YE community as well. There's a lot of learning there, and it's a big community you can also become part of. Then we have Afreximbank. They have provided support to youth-focused AfCFTA and intra-Africa trade promotion initiatives such as YALDA and the Grand Africa Initiative and Changing Narratives Africa. They have Creative Arts Nexus, which is created to support youth-dominated entertainment and creative sector. And lastly, Afreximbank also support partnerships with various youth-centric organizations such as Tony Elumelu Foundation, which they also have sponsored to the intra-African Trade Fair in 2018 and 21. So I think we should leave it to this, and thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Mia, for your awesome presentation. A little reminder again, the modules shall be available. The modules shall be available on YALDA YouTube channel. There is a link that has been shared in the chat.
Presentation.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, guys. So we have 8 more minutes to wrap up. So we will go directly to our last presentation from the AfCFTA Secretariat, and I will call on Marie-Providence. And presentation will be in French for all the French speakers, but don't forget the module that is going to be dispatched shall be in both English and French. Alors, Marie-Providence, si vous pouvez m'entendre, vous pouvez parler.
Guys, if we need to do it in English, I apologize because we don't have translators today, and not a lot of people do not speak French on this call. So please, Valencia, load the English presentation, because we don't have simultaneous interpreters. If we had simultaneous interpreters, Marie-Providence, we would love to do it in English, but it's unfortunate we didn't get simultaneous interpretation. Module 5, everybody, we will have simultaneous interpretation. There was just a few complications that our partner institutions couldn't help us with. Valencia, please load the English presentation. Thank you very much, Marie-Providence.
Thank you, colleagues, and good evening to you all. Greetings from Accra, Ghana, at the headquarters of the AfCFTA Secretariat. I was hoping to make the presentation in French for the benefit of colleagues who speak French, but don't worry, I speak both languages, so if I can still respond to queries that will be formulated in French. Thank you. So today, I will just briefly discuss the work that the AfCFTA Secretariat has been doing and that is relevant to youth. A lot has been said before me, so I will skip quite a few things and just focus on current developments that are related to the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade. Thank you. Next slide, please. So as you know, just as a recap and to provide context to the discussion that we are going to have this evening, the AfCFTA, or the African Continental Free Trade Area, as you would know, is a flagship project of the African Union Agenda 2063. It entered into force on the 30th of May 2019. In terms of signatures of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA, 54 out of 55 African Union member states have signed the AfCFTA agreement. Eritrea is yet to sign. In terms of ratification, the ratification is a legal process by which a country binds itself to the provisions of an agreement. We have received so far 43 instruments of ratification. And in terms, when it comes to ratification, I'd like to point out that youth can actually play a critical role in engaging their respective governments and encouraging them to ratify. And this is mainly addressed to colleagues that are coming from countries that have not yet ratified or are in the process of ratifying the AfCFTA agreement. Next, please. With regards to the state of play, because the key milestones, of the AfCFTA, so that you understand the history of the agreement. So the journey began a long time ago, but the key, I will only discuss the key ones, namely the decision to establish the AfCFTA to accelerate regional integration in Africa in 2012. In 2018, the AfCFTA agreement is open for signature in Kigali, Rwanda, on the 21st of March. In 2019, more specifically on the 30th of May, the AfCFTA agreement enters into force. On the same year, in July 2019, the Assembly of Heads of State and Governments, which is the highest decision-making organ of the African Union and of course of the AfCFTA Secretariat, launches the operational phase of the AfCFTA, and with it certain tools or instruments, supporting tools and instruments to support the implementation of the AfCFTA. I will discuss them a little later. In 2021, the Assembly of Heads of State and Governments of the African Union launched the start of trading under the AfCFTA to begin on the 1st of January 2021. And of course, on 2022, there's a key and critical decision that was made by the AU Assembly to include the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade within the scope of the AfCFTA agreements. Next, please. So in terms of the state of play of the scope of the agreement. Sorry, the agreement covers is a comprehensive agreement that covers areas that are pertinent to trade, namely trading goods, trading services, investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy. And more recently, digital trade and women and youth in trade were also included within the scope of the agreement. Next. As to the supporting rules, so I will try to discuss some of the supporting rules. Some of them have already been discussed, so I will not go into that. My colleague from Afreximbank has extensively explained what the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System does and how it works. A previous one of my predecessors has also discussed what the African Trade Observatory is. So I will try to focus on some of the instruments that were not mentioned and the key ones that were recently launched. So you have the rules of origin, of course, that set the criteria that confer to a specific product what we would call an AfCFTA nationality. In other words, the rules of origin will determine whether a product can benefit from tariff preferences within the framework of the AfCFTA agreement. As of now, 88.8% of tariff lines have been covered, which is quite significant, and which means that AfCFTA state parties can begin trading on those tariff lines that are covered. Then you also have, and this is not mentioned on the slide, I apologize, I had to update it based on the previous presentations. You have what we call an e-tariff book, and the e-tariff book was launched earlier this month at the meeting of the Council of Ministers of the AfCFTA. So the e-tariff book, it's available on the AfCFTA website, AfCFTA Secretariat website, sorry. I will share the link with you, and I invite you all to have a look, to explore the website and to look at the different AfCFTA instruments and their explanations. It's quite extensive. The e-tariff book actually is part of the process of digitalization and facilitation of exchange within the framework of the AfCFTA. It makes the schedule of tariff concessions easily accessible to customs authorities and And it is of course as it is available on a dedicated website, whose link I will share with you on the website. And of course, you can also so you can have a look at it and see how it works. Then we have also rules of origin manual, and the manual has been drafted in accordance with Article 42 of the Annex of Annex 2 of the Protocol on Trading Goods, which deals with rules of origin. And what the manual does, it describes in detail the implementation, the application of the rules of origin to determine the status of origin of the products that are being traded, the administrative procedures and the institutional framework to implement the rules of origin as negotiated within the framework of the AfCFTA agreement. Then, of course, you have the AfCFTA negotiation portal, that online portal, that facilitates negotiations of tariff offers. You then have also the non-tariff barriers online mechanism that allows traders to report non-tariff barriers with a view to resolving them. The system is operational, and you can actually report an NTB that you encounter at a point of entry or even at a point of exit of an AfCFTA state party. And the mechanism is designed in such a way that the complaints, once submitted, are received immediately by the relevant authorities, and the follow-up mechanism is put in place under in accordance with the provisions of the Annex 5 that specifically deals with the non-tariff barriers. With regards to the timeline of resolutions, it really depends on the complexity of the issue that is being reported. But suppose that if the issue is just a matter of implementation, let's say an arbitrary implementation of a specific measure that is attached to a certain product, then that is easily resolved. But if, for instance, the issue that is being reported requires an amendment of a legislation, obviously the understanding is that the process will be slightly longer, because then of course the amendment has to go through the national legislative processes. It is accessible on the website website indicated in my slide, which is tradebarriers.africa. Don't worry, I will share all this information with you. So as I said, I will not mention the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. I will also not discuss the African Trade Observatory. There's also the African Trade Gateway that has been developed in collaboration with Afreximbank, and which is designed to provide market intelligence. Next, please. Now, to set the scene as well regarding, or to understand the origin of the inclusion of the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade, it is important for you to understand some of the pertinent decisions that were taken by the organs, the pertinent organs of the AfCFTA structure. And this is, of course, the Assembly of Head of State and Government that made a commitment in 2020 to broaden inclusiveness in the operation of the AfCFTA through interventions that would support young Africans, women, and small medium-sized enterprises, as well as integrating informal cross-border traders into the formal economy by implementing the simplified trade regime. This was done in the understanding, of course, that the concentration of women and youth economic operators are mostly in the informal sector.
Sorry, Maripovna. Sorry.
Is my time up?
Yes, I guess. So please, you will just mind wrapping up so that we keep up to our time. We don't want to keep people here for more than 2 hours.
Right.
Sorry.
Thank you. So yes, of course, after that, after the commitment, then came the decision to include the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade within the scope of the AfCFTA agreement. Next, please. With regards to the negotiations of the protocol itself, so there are certain prerequisites that need to be fulfilled before we begin the negotiations, and I'd like to discuss them a little bit so that you can understand the process itself and how you can engage. So a committee on women and youth in trade was established by the Council of Ministers in 2021, and the committee is actually the institutional structure that will negotiate the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade. Who are part of the committee? The committee is made of nominated delegates, and these delegates are nominated by member states with expertise in the areas that are to be covered, mainly women and youth empowerment, economic empowerment, and trade. When it comes to the negotiations themselves, they are yet to be launched, but they will be launched in the coming months, and are expected to be finalized within the deadlines set by the AU Assembly. And once the negotiations are finalized, normally you would go through the adoption process, which means that the Committee of Senior Trade Officials will also consider the draft protocol as well as the Council of Ministers. Once that is done, of course, the document has to be legally scrubbed, then submitted, recommended for adoption by the Assembly of Heads of State and Governments. So as you know, the AfCFTA Secretariat is a member state-driven institution, and therefore the negotiations are also led by AfCFTA member states. In other words, the negotiations process are not open to non-state parties, or to non-state entities. So private sectors organizations cannot be part of the negotiations. Next, please. So I also want to discuss.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, sorry, let me just discuss the work that the Secretariat is doing, because it's relevant, at least the current one. Okay. I'd like to mention the AfCFTA Conference on Women and Youth in Trade that's happening from the 12th to the 14th of September in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, which is being convened under the patronage of Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, who is a champion of women and youth in trade under the AfCFTA. So I would invite you, of course, to join the conference if you can, and to participate. The details of the conference will be released on the AfCFTA website, and of course on its social media very soon. So you will have all the information that you require in terms of participation. We've also engaged a lot on capacity building of women and youth on the AfCFTA, first to improve the knowledge of AfCFTA or regarding the AfCFTA, and of course improve the appreciation of where the opportunities lie. We've carried out several consultations on the protocol on women and youth in trade to first discuss the key elements that need to be included. And these consultations have been held with the private sector. I'd like to point out that they are not finished. We will continue consulting as we go on with the negotiations processes. We've also held some technical meetings, such as the brainstorming sessions, to understand the scope and the approach of the protocol on women and youth in trade. And of course, we continue to collaborate with key partners such as UNDP, Afreximbank, and as well, of course, we are working with YALDA on this series of modules to promote, engagement of women and youth on the AfCFTA generally. So I think I'm going to stop here. I understand that I am pressed for time. Thank you so much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Marie-Providence, pour cette belle présentation, malheureusement, qui a dû être interrompue à cause du temps. Thank you very much, everyone. We are so sorry that we have to keep on time, and therefore all questions shall be transferred to Module 5. Like I mentioned before, stay tuned because we have a bonus Module 5 that is coming up. I don't know if John is here, but I would love to remind you that you can subscribe to our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram, as well as follow us on YouTube with our YouTube channel. The links have been distributed in the chat. You can refer to them. Thank you very much to YALDA for organizing this wonderful module session. Thank you very much to the ITC. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Julia. Thank you to the UNDP that was represented by Baraka. Thank you to the AfCFTA Secretariat, Marie-Providence. Merci beaucoup to PAPS by Mike Ovalu, to UNECA by me, Vidal, and then to Miss Eliano Ewi, also by the UNDP. Thank you very much to John that assisted me in hosting the session. I don't know if he's here. John, are you with me?
Yes, please, I'm with you, Ines. Thank you very much for hosting.
Okay, so it is on this note that I will officially close our Module 4 and stay tuned to receive information concerning Module 5. Have a very good night for those who are GMT and above, and have a very good evening for those who are GMT and below. Goodbye.
Yes, I'll just jump in with a little bit of information, but we all understand that we have been doing this module since May, and we have been taking our quizzes and assignments. So to inform you that up to this module, we'll still be taking our quizzes and assignment, and we appreciate all those who have taken the quizzes and assignments. And in due time, I believe after the grading has been done, you'll all receive your certificates. So if you have been doing your quizzes, your assignments, be ready to get that. And also to inform you that for Module 5, there will be no quiz or assignment. It will be just a session for discussion, and we also hope to have a panel session, and we'll discuss more about, I saw that the PAPS was also an interesting topic, and we'll have a panel session there and more discussion and questions, just as Ines has mentioned. So be prepared for this 5th bonus and keep taking your assignments. The feedback will send you just load the feedback and all the session tour, because we appreciate that. And all the best. Back to you, Ines. You can close the session.
Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. La module sera disponible sur la chaîne YouTube de YALDA, ainsi elle sera disséminée par mail. Ainsi, vous avez la liberté de vous enregistrer sur les pages social media de YALDA, sur Facebook, YALDA Africa, sur Twitter, YALDA Africa, sur Instagram, YALDA Dumela, et sur LinkedIn, Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development in Africa. Et aussi, restez scotchés pour les informations concernant la 5e module. Bonne nuit à tout le monde et rendez-vous d'ici peu. Au revoir.